So, the fact is the American, Canadian, European media system is completely destructive to your psyche. Don't consume it. In the end, people always ask me, well, what do we do? What do we read if you don't want us to read this and that? So I can throw out that statement as a thesis statement, or I can throw it out as a preface statement, and now I'm going to break it down and show you why. If you pay any attention to the media, you will get stories about Africa that generally kind of look like this. Black and white. It's always, it's not black and white, it's black. It's black violence, black on black violence. It's black people killing black people. This is what the American and Canadian media says over and over and over. The white-collar war criminals behind the black African warlords are never shown. The corporations that are involved are never shown. What we get is Joseph Kony. How many people saw Kony 2012? That hysterical piece of falsification of consciousness that just went rampant over the media a few what was it, 6 months ago, 5 months ago. Perfect example. Kony is the problem. These white guys are saving this, saving Africa, these young white guys invisible children. Who is invisible children? Where do they get their money? How do they happen to get into northern Uganda and do what they did with the complicity or the support or the backing or the involvement of the government of Uganda? What's the government of Uganda's role in this whole thing? And these are all pieces of the Congo story. Where do the guns come from? Find me one news report in the New York Times talking about where the guns come from in Central Africa or in Afghanistan, whether it's our guns or the other guns. Who's producing the guns? Where are the guns coming from? How many people, and I have in the past, so don't be ashamed, but how many people ever have read the Atlantic Monthly? Look at the advertising. Some of the biggest advertisers for the Atlantic Monthly are the Lockheed Martin Corporation, the big oil companies. And then people read the Atlantic Monthly, they read an article about the Congo or about Joseph Kony or about Afghanistan, and they think, wow, this is an expose, it's really great. And who's that guy that does a lot of exposés? Real famous American journalist. What?
Michael Moore?
No, not on that level. He's not a. He's more of a mainstream series. Hirsch, Seymour Hirsch. Seymour Hirsch is always in the Atlantic Monthly, but Seymour Hirsch doesn't tell you anything. All he tells you is what they want you to know. Somebody, somewhere, wants you to know what Seymour Hirsch is going to give you. It's just like the guys who gave the story about Nixon and the White House and the Watergate story. They were given that story. It was delivered to them in their lap. They didn't go out and do investigative journalism. Somebody wanted that story to break. And it's the same with anything in the Atlantic Monthly or in Harper's or in U.S. News and World Report or in the New York Times. If it looks like truth, it has an element of truth, and that's what propaganda is. So let's go to Central Africa. This slide sort of sums it up. It's the election of the guy named Joseph Kabila. You see in the forefront, this guy has a t-shirt, Conquest. So I'm trying to make the equation here. This is all about conquest. Read Manufacture and Consent, or read The Political Economy of Human Rights by Ed Herman and Noam Chomsky, and you start to understand the nature of how elections are controlled, rigged, and fabricated in banana republics.
Like the U.S. today.
Exactly. I was getting to that, but you're interrupting me, which is very rude. Please do. I don't mind any interruptions.
You said you want us to do that.
I want you to be real. I don't care what you are as long as you're real. If you're offensive, as long as you're real. If you got something to say and it's burning, you need to scream it, just be real. Please. So, foreign-backed occupation and terrorism of Congo is what we're talking about. How many people have seen or read or done any research about the conflict minerals story in Central Africa? Raise your hand, high, so that I can get a sense. The rest of you haven't done any research into the conflict minerals thing, but you've heard about it. You understand that there's a relationship perhaps between cell phones and conflict minerals, etc., generally. So that's the propaganda. The propaganda system has created this story that there are conflict minerals coming out of the Congo, and all we have to do is validate the chain of origin of these minerals, where they come from, and make sure they're clean, like the diamonds. The whole Kimberley process in 2001, 2002 was to create clean diamonds. You can go out to the store today and buy your clean diamond. This is what the Kimberley process did. This is absolute nonsense. There is not a diamond that's been produced that doesn't come from Africa, and they're all blood diamonds. It doesn't matter where you get them, whether they're Botswana, certified clean, the San Bushmen are dying like flies, and this is diamond territory. Central African Republic, diamond territory. Angola, do a little bit of research. Read the story that I wrote, Blood Diamond, and it breaks down how this goes on. So the Kimberley process was sort of like a model that has now been applied to the Congo. And what they do is they create in the minds of the public, through films like Blood Diamond, the idea that, of course, this is nasty business. And those Africans are involved, and there's some white mercenaries, and we need to stop it. And there's people in The Hague who care. And if you remember the film Blood Diamond, did anybody see Blood Diamond with Leonardo DiCaprio? If you didn't, go watch it. But think about this. At the very end, they have this scene where the black guy, who so far has been sort of the subhuman primate guy, and the real white hero has been Leonardo DiCaprio, who I would call Tarzan. And of course, he's got his Jane, and that's the white journalist woman. So you got Tarzan and Jane. Now, this is an old story for Central Africa. Then you got Ben Affleck, there's Tarzan. Then you got Jane Goodall, there's Jane. These are the people involved in Central Africa. Who is getting the publicity? It's the white people. It's the Tarzan-Jane story. So go to Blood Diamond, watch that story, and the hero, the guy who saves the day, is Leonardo DiCaprio. In the end, he dies. He's the victim. White people, this is the story. White people are the victims in Africa. It's how we turn upside down the psychology that creates in us the sense that we are victims. We are also good people. This is true. I mean, who in the room doesn't believe that they're not a good person? Or who in the room, everyone in the room believes they're a good person. We are good people. The system creates in us a sense that we are good and we're not complicit, and in fact we're taking actions to do something about it. We all want to do the right thing. This is what the system creates. But the concept of white supremacy is that we're good, we're saving Africa, it needs to be saved, we have to get over there and save it, and give us money through those images like in the beginning of the starving black child. So this is the construct of white supremacy. Go back to Blood Diamond. In the end, the black guy who survives, who found the diamond, he shows up in The Hague or wherever, and he's now the guy who goes and gives the testimony about how the diamond trade is killing people in Sierra Leone, and there's a bunch of white businessmen, politicians sitting there listening to him who are going to do something about it. This is absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. The people that run the show, the most powerful people in the world, believe that they deserve to run the show, and anyone who challenges the show will be cut down or silenced in one way or another if you're serious, if you're really serious and you challenge it very seriously. That's called, it's laid out very well in the book by that guy in California, Endgame. Anybody read Endgame?
Derek Jensen.
Derek Jensen, thank you. Read the first, if you just go in a bookstore, open it up, stand there, and read the 20 premises at the beginning. If you don't do anything else. Because one of the premises is, the system is premised on